Well, hello and welcome to what is going to be my first episodic series on YouTube. So what I've got going on here is that I have a 2016 Triumph Thruxton R, and I'm going to be completing an Airbox delete. With this being a longer multi-phase mod, that's kind of how I'm going to break the video up. So the plan is for there to be 4 episodes, which will include this intro along with the relocation of the rear brake fluid reservoir. The second episode will be the full disassembly, which will include the wheel, the airbox, the tank, the seat. For the third episode, I'm going to be re-establishing the paths for the wiring, sorting out where all of that's going to go and getting that cleaned up. And then the fourth and final episode will be my final reassembly of the bike, getting the whole thing back together. And of course, I'll cover anything else that comes up along the way, because any project, regardless of the magnitude, always has little issues pop up throughout. Now, before I really dive in, what I want to do is talk for a second about what this kit is and kind of how it came to be. So there's this guy named Rish who has what is, in my opinion, one of the best Thruxtons in the world at the moment. Top 5 for sure. And if you want to see pictures of his beautiful bike, he is at Diaries of a Cafe Racer on Instagram. So one day, Rish gets it in his mind, he wants an Airbox delete kit for this R. As I understand it, as we've kind of become friends, he used to have a 900 that had an Airbox delete. Once he got his 1200, he wanted that done as well. So he kept waiting for a company to come out with a kit that would work for the machine, and no one did. So he decided to take matters into his own hand, design his own kit, and then sell a limited number of them since he had gone through the research. What Rish ended up selling was a kit which consisted of a new electronics tray, pod air filters, and an evap delete kit. The big piece of this was that underseat tray, because that's what you need. Like, that's what you've got to do, is find a place to put all of these electronics, the battery, everything else that lives in the space known as the airbox on a modern bike. So this left it up to us to source the lithium-ion battery that the tray was designed for, a crankcase breather, and any other odds and ends that came up along the way. Now, I was a little hesitant to switch to a lithium-ion battery because I've had that go poorly for me in the past. I had 2 Triumph Daytonas in the past. One of them, I put a lithium-ion battery in and said never again. The thing would never start below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Just gave me all kinds of trouble. This one has been very different. The battery that Rish designed the kit to work with is a firepower battery. My battery happened to go out right at 2 months before I started this project, so I just went ahead and got the lithium-ion unit. Been using it for 2.5 months now, and it's been great. Even as I went through this project and it sat around, not always on the charger, it seemed to do a really good job of holding a charge and starting the bike when I needed it to. And just as an interesting note here, in total, the kit wound up saving about 12 pounds off of what is a 450-ish pound motorcycle. So that's pretty significant. The battery made up over 8 pounds of that on its own. So if you're looking for a significant weight savings on your Thruxton, really any motorcycle, a lithium-ion battery is a good way to go if it doesn't give you trouble starting all the time. But anyway, that's enough backstory. Let's move on to why we're really here and get started modding the bike. Now, as I mentioned earlier, what I wound up doing first was the relocation of the rear brake fluid reservoir. And that was primarily because I had already gotten that part in before I got the rest of the kit, but also because it's something you can do long before any of the rest of the kit has taken shape. So from the factory, the rear brake fluid reservoir hides behind the right-hand side cover. Obviously, once you rip everything out for the airbox, that has to go somewhere. I connected with A&J Cycles out of New York and wound up with a small Rizoma unit that tucks nicely against the frame, looks the part, and I'm just really happy with how it turned out. So without further ado, let's get started. So today I'm going to take the first steps on my Airbox Delete kit, which for me, because I have the parts available, is going to be to relocate the rear brake fluid reservoir. So that hides behind the cover normally. I've got that pulled off already. I've got this little protecting piece here on the frame. I've got a little bracket that I'm going to put here, and then I'm going to mount a Rizoma reservoir. So I'm going to pull this off, get it drained, cut the line where I need it, install the Rizoma bit, and that should be it. So my initial thought was that I was going to mount it to the heel plate, which I stole straight from A&J Cycles. They have usually mounted them in the holes here. The most recent one they did actually was mounted there, and then this had a spacer so that it could fit up in that space. Well, I misunderstood what Brian was telling me when we were talking about it. Obviously, I don't have that spacer, am I gonna make it? So what I did for the time being is I fashioned this semi-janky bracket. Now this is just the cheap, I don't even know what it's called, but the cheap aluminum, super easy to bend, that has the pre-drilled holes. And I have wrapped that around, and then I rounded off these edges here at the end of the quote-unquote bracket that I've made. And then the new reservoir mounts on the end of that with the hardware that it came with. Cut the existing brake line, run it onto that, and then I will also pull this back off and spray paint it black. But this is kind of my proof of concept mounting. And then the heel guard will go there, so it's not going to hide it completely, but personally I think Rizoma makes just incredible looking stuff, so I am not at all disappointed that it'll kind of peek out a little bit. Okay, and so here's the finished result. Here's my bracket that I made, spray painted black, so we kind of match the rest of the area. Mounted the Rizoma reservoir to that, cut down the line. Now that's good to go. I'm gonna top it off with fluid, bleed the system out, and then I'll put the heel guard back over and kind of show how that turned out. Overall, I am very pleased with this portion of the project. You can see in these final couple of images how the reservoir tucks in nicely behind the heel guard, and how the bracket that I made blends in wonderfully with the frame now that it's got a little coat of black paint on there. There are plenty of ways that you can do this setup. This is just what I came up with, and I think it's worked out really well. So thank you for tuning into this first episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you'll hang around to see what goes into the rest of this project as I dig in a little deeper in the future.